A bit earlier. For more now on today's polling that shows a majority don't support a co-payment for GP visits or lifting the pension age. I spoke to the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Josh Frydenberg, earlier in the day.
Well, Kieran, polls go up and down, but certainly the news over the last week has been of debt and levy and taxes, of pensions and Medicare, and obviously there's been some talk about what's been happening in the New South Wales ICAC inquiry. So it hasn't been a conducive environment in terms of polls, but I think the Australian public do understand that we have a very big job to do, and they elected us to pay back Labor's debt, they elected us to stop the boats, and they elected us to eliminate the carbon tax. Well, we are stopping the boats. We have passed legislation through the lower house to get rid of the carbon tax, and the budget will be part of our plan to actually reduce Labor's debt. And Australia needs to reduce debt and to bring the budget back into surplus. So reform is tough. It's not always popular, but that's what the Australian people elected us to do.
55% of people in this Galaxy poll today don't support the idea of a co-payment for GP visits. This is more than just a saving, though, isn't it? This is about a change to universal health care, and clearly it's not popular.
Look, Joe Hockey gave a very good speech, as you know, about a week ago, where he spoke about the need for more co-payments, for more means testing, for more asset sales, and for the end of corporate welfare. That is a tough message, but it's a necessary message. The IMF have detailed the spending commitments of 17 leading international economies, and Australia has the highest rate of growth in spending, more so than the United States and Canada, Germany and France, Japan and Korea. It's a wake-up call that we do need to rein in our spending. That's where our fundamental problem is. I mean, Labor lifted spending on a projected basis to 26% of GDP in the coming decade. You compare that, Kieran, to just 23% in the last year of the Howard government. It's not sustainable, particularly with an ageing population, and we are going to have to take some tough measures in this budget.
Universal health care, though, has been fundamental in this country for many years now. And what do you say to those concerned that to introduce the co-payment would be a step down the road of the US path?
Well, let's just see what is announced in the budget. But as you say, Medicare has served Australia very well, and the Coalition is committed to Medicare. We're also committed to a very vibrant and robust private health system, because we believe that reduces the burden on the taxpayer if more people can take up private health insurance. Look, we just need a system which is fair, which is balanced, but is also economically responsible and sustainable. And I think you'll see that in the announcements on budget night.
I want to ask you about this story on the front page of The Age newspaper and the Sydney Morning Herald. Treasurer Joe Hockey apparently offering access for tens of thousands of dollars from business figures and industry lobbyists through a secretive fundraising body within the Liberal Party. This is the North Sydney Forum. As I say, front page of the Herald and The Age this morning. Should the Liberal Party be more upfront about how it generates these sorts of donations?
Look, I think this is an absolutely outrageous story. I mean, Joe Hockey, in having this forum, is doing nothing unusual or untoward. Many MPs on both sides of the House have similar arrangements because we don't have a fully taxpayer-funded political system. So members do raise money, and there is nothing unusual or untoward about this. But it's worth pointing out to you, Kieran, that the biggest donors in politics are not on our side. It's on the Labor side. It's the union movement. They've given tens of millions of dollars to help fund campaigns against work choices and ongoing Labor members' campaigns. The outrageous thing about our political system is on the Labor side, where the unions have far too much influence on the political direction of the Labor Party and policy making in this country. They only represent 12 to 13% of the private sector workforce. All members of the front bench are members of the union, and when it comes to donations, it's the union movement who are the biggest donors in Australian politics.
But isn't this about disclosure, being upfront as to who is donating money, tens of thousands of dollars in some instances, particularly when you're talking about one of the most senior officers in the land? That's the point here, isn't it, about disclosing through the Liberal Party who is actually making these donations?
Well, I'm sure proper processes are adhered to by all members of the Liberal Party. But the point here is there is nothing unusual or untoward about having such forums as a means of political and economic discussion and people coming together to share their opinions. There's nothing unusual or untoward. It goes on both sides of Australian politics.
I want to ask you about a mention in the Australian Financial Review. Joe Aston, in his column Rear Window, has said that the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Peter Credlin, has told her colleagues, other Chiefs of Staff of Cabinet Ministers, that some of them need to lift their game, that they're being essentially shown up by junior front benchers, Jamie Briggs and Josh Frydenberg. How do you respond to that?
Well, Kieran, I wasn't there, and I'm sure Joe Aston has a lot of fun, stoking the fire, but that's the first I've heard of it. I will read his article with interest, but I don't think it amounts to anything.
Obviously, it amounts to a show of support from the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. You can't be unhappy with that, though.
Look, we'll always take compliments and criticisms whenever they come our way, but I just think the message is we've got a very difficult budget to introduce because it's going to involve spending cuts across the board, but it's necessary action, and every Cabinet Minister, together with every member of the backbench, will be looking towards supporting Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey and to support the Coalition's plan to bring the budget back into surplus.
Josh Frydenberg, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for that.
Nice to be with you, Kieran.
A quick break on AIM Agenda. Back in just a moment with the Shadow Assistant Treasurer, Andrew Lee.